I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about true crime and psychology. Thank you so much for joining. Let's hop right into today's topic. Let's go.
Welcome. Thank you for everybody that's joining live and for anybody that will watch on replay. Today, we are talking about the Colin Gray trial. So, Colt Gray, he was identified as the puppeteer in the Appalachia High School incident. There are some words I can't say here on YouTube, and so that's why sometimes I have to talk around certain words for anyone that's new. Good afternoon, Lisa. Good afternoon, anybody that's going to join us later. But this case has been really interesting from a psychological perspective because when you look at red flags in a potential teenager that might be at risk for engaging in some type of harm in the future towards others or even possibly to themselves, this case has all the red flags. And the father, Colin Gray, he is on trial. Marcee Gray, the mother, she testified, and a lot came out during her testimony, including the fact that she had researched even before this incident, that she had researched Ethan Crumbly's parents. So I think it was Jennifer and James. Y'all know I'm bad with names, but Ethan Crumbly, his parents were convicted because he was provided with a weapon. They failed to secure it. He clearly had all the red flags, and a jury convicted them and found the parents negligent and responsible in what their child did. And that was something that Marcee had Googled even before this incident. And the state has a lot of thoughts about that. I don't think Marcee, the mom, I don't think her testimony came off incredibly credible. I was over watching on Trial Live TV, and they asked, do you think Marcee's testimony helped the state? Do you think it hurt the state? Do you think it helped the defense? Or do you think it hurt the defense? And really, her testimony didn't move the needle for me at all. Like, it really didn't provide any additional context because I do think that she minimized a lot of her own role, her own. And so this is just from watching based on the publicly available information, based on her mother's testimony. She made it sound like, oh, me tying up my mom and driving to Colin's house, threatening to unalive my husband and my child, that was just me freaking out. Or like, to me, she just really seemed to minimize a lot of her behaviors and her role. A lot of people are upset about why she isn't being held criminally responsible as well. Well, the state had already determined that she couldn't have unsupervised contact with the children anyway. That visitation was at his discretion. She had already lost custody of the children. I think she's still working with DFACS, and we will talk about because Colt's sister, Colin's middle child, his only daughter, she testified today, and we will talk about that towards the end as well. And so with Marcee, her and Colin are still married. So Marcee is Colt's mother. She does not currently have custody of any of the children. They were married in 2009, and she seemed very nervous. Colt is her first child, and she was aware of the incident where Colt found a way around the firewall and social services became involved. And she says that there were 2 sessions with a home-based therapist, and we hadn't really heard about that yet. We really hadn't heard about Colt receiving any type of therapy, but they ended up moving, I believe. And that service came to an end and they moved. There was another CPS report made around Halloween where she was found passed out in the car. She, once again, to me, she really minimized that incident as well. And often people that have histories of substance abuse, they often will especially somebody that is at an earlier stage of sobriety or at an earlier stage of treatment, or somebody that hasn't fully walked through all of their steps and hasn't completely made amends, sometimes there will be some lying to self and others and not really recognizing how, like, irresponsible, how impaired they really were. Because it's my understanding that she was passed out in the car on Halloween. The children were trick-or-treating. The two youngest were trick-or-treating. One of them, I think, gets lost, and that's how CPS got involved. And to me, when she was talking about it, she was like, "Oh, yeah, an over-concerned neighbor called." She made it sound like it really wasn't that big of a deal, but I do think it was a big deal. The other part of this that could have influenced some of her testimony is the fact that this trial is being streamed. People are talking about this trial, and sometimes people are concerned about how they come across and how things come across, and so that could have impacted some of her testimony. But to me, she really didn't come across very credible to me at times, and that was just me watching. That's Patrice's opinion, and I wonder if any of the jurors did do interviews after, if they would talk about which testimony really stood out to them, what was the evidence that stood out to them, and was there anything that really, like, didn't, impact them as much. I would be interested to see what the jury thought. We may never know that. And so she was asked about why Colt stayed with dad when she moved with the two youngest. And the mom, so on the stand, the mother is asked, "Why didn't you take all three of your children when you moved to live where?" Because there was an incident. Colt stayed with dad and she moved with the two youngest. She said he liked his room. He liked the way his room was set up. That's gonna become important later when we hear his sister testify about some of the family dynamics and how she feels in her foster family basis versus how she felt in her family. Now, my child could love his room, but, like, to me, there wasn't anything based on, like, his friends were there, he has a better relationship with his dad, we felt it was gonna be a better fit for him, it was just he liked the way his room was set up. That was the reason he stayed with dad. There were also some things that weren't stated because I think, Colin and Marcee, I think they have a history between one another because there seemed to be some allegations of possible DV, and she's going to make allegations that he was harmful towards Colt, and of course the defense is objecting. I'll have to get to my notes to figure out because at one point they did ask for a mistrial after something was said. It was not granted, and I think the judge just gave an instruction to the jury. And so the mom denied knowing about the incident where Colt threatened to pew pew a school, and there were some comments about that Colt just couldn't take living with his dad. Oh, this was the part that was not in front of the jury. Because I think the judge kicked the jury out because she was gonna get into some things and the judge needed to hear what she was gonna say. And so the jury did not hear Marcee say that Colt couldn't take living with his dad. They were getting into physical altercations, constant screaming battles. He was trapped there. No one was ever involved. He was at his breaking point. The thing that I didn't hear people talking about is Colt taking responsibility for his aggressive behavior. So I really believed the sister. So when his sister testified that really a lot of when Colt didn't get his way, that's when there would be these big escalations. I think somebody testified, ooh, it was during dad's interview. There was a recorded interview with Colin, and during that interview, so if a child breaks a window, that is property destruction. And if they do it intentionally or on purpose, because he made it sound like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. He broke a window and his granddad was trying to get him arrested. And it was just like, he broke a window. His behavior was completely out of control. And there were, once again, all of these red flags, all of these red flags. And so, hey, mama, welcome. You didn't miss too much. Welcome. Come on in. And, once again, so we're talking about when mom was on the stand. This was on Monday. So Colt's mom is testifying. She's talking about some of her observations. She was so the jury did not hear that. Some of that information will come in later with the sister, and I think it was because she actually observed some of those physical altercations. So for some reason they let the sister say it. They objected when the mom said it. The mom talked about enrolling Colt in school, attempting to enroll him into online school. There was all of this back and forth about how he did not attend the 8th grade and how she had some difficulty registering him for school because of the fact that he did not attend the 8th grade. We are also going to talk about, so just a programming note, we are also going to talk about the counselor. So Colt's counselor, the one that met with him, he was only in the high school for 5 days. So the school year where we have the September 4th incident, he was only in that building to attend school 5 times. And so we'll also talk about that counselor as well. The police were contacted and when he was in 7th or 8th grade because of that broken window. Dad asked why the police were called. Mom said that she had counseling scheduled at Healing Connections, but because Dad came and got him, he was not able to start that counseling. Mom fails a drug test due to an anonymous report. So somebody anonymously reported her, and we don't know who did. And for social services, or if somebody is being monitored, if they get an anonymous report, they don't have to say who did it. But mom was about to, I think, come off of probation, or because she was being monitored for substances. And I think they did a hair follicle test, and she ended up testing positive. Dad mentions more of that. So, because Dad's going to say later that Colt was upset that mom had been on meth and that whole thing. And he was only probably 13, 14 years old. And the boundaries in this house, there were none. There was a lot of codependence. And when I say codependence, so to me, just looking at family dynamics, and when there's somebody that has a history with substance issues, there is normally an enabler. And so getting involved with Al-Anon, and so that's for the families of people that have substance issues, because sometimes people aren't held accountable for their behaviors. And there didn't seem to be clear boundaries. I'm going to talk about it later, but when Colin's daughter was 13 years old, she's going to say that her dad would come to her to ask her advice on what she should do, on what he should do with her brother. And she's like, talk to an adult. Like she's 13. He's exhibiting serious mental health problems, and she of course didn't have a clue on what he should do. And so there didn't seem to be clear boundaries. I think Colin wanted Colt to be happy, and in his interview he talked about him going hunting and trying to give him pep talks, and I think he just desperately wanted him to be okay. But I think his son needed serious mental health help. And I don't remember the mention of Zoloft in Dad's. I don't remember any mention of Zoloft. I would be interested to see if the defense is going to bring in an expert that talks about how SSRIs can impact children and teens. But that would kind of point, because Dad was aware that he was taking Zoloft and wasn't prescribed, so that could make dad look bad too. They've been trying to point the finger at anybody else, the defense, and that's just what the defense is supposed to do. So please, as you get frustrated with the defense, take a deep breath and remember the defense is just doing what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to do what's best for their client, and it can feel infuriating at times, especially when today the defense almost tried, well, I'm saying almost, but the defense did kind of point the finger at Colin's sister a little, that she was aware that it was a lot of people were upset in the chat, and I totally get that. And we will get into that a little bit deeper towards once we get to her section. I'm trying to stay focused. Y'all know that is hard for me. The mom did talk about the fact that there were issues registering him for ninth grade, that mom has an interest in true crime and serial killer shows, and she thought this was all a joke. And she says that if at any point she thought that he was serious, that she would have got him help. But that's where I don't think they were seeing the true dark side that was there. And we weren't able to see the pictures from today, because it's my understanding that one of the investigators saw self-done marks on Colt. And I would just be interested to see where those were, or because if it was in a space where parents might not see, or was it in a space where people kind of could see? Because sometimes that can be a cry for help as well. Okay. And so let me know if y'all have any general questions about this case. It's been really just so interesting to watch. Please make sure to make that children don't have access to weapons. Really, anybody that is struggling with any signs of depression, severe anxiety, making sure that they don't have access. Lately, there was a NFL player that 25 years old, 25 or 26, I've seen both stated, but he was recovering from a long injury, and unfortunately, I believe his death has been ruled self-inflicted. And so please make sure that you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of others. 988 is the crisis line. So teens can text or call 988 if they are struggling. I've worked with teens in the past when they were having a difficult moment. Now, sometimes 988 isn't always helpful. So that's where you have to have more than one resource. Sometimes it can be very helpful. It just kind of depends who you get on the other side of the call. And so the question was, why didn't the school and school board quietly and discreetly, hold on. So why didn't the school and school board quietly and discreetly deploy plainclothes security officers sporadically for observations of children? So that would cost money. So most schools barely have the resources to have their SRO. So most schools, and I think that's why they're starting to make sure that people kind of know the signs and the red flags, because his counselor, and we'll get to it a little bit later, his counselor identified him as a student that definitely needed more support, and that had issues, and that was kind of at risk. Colt, the child, was making statements to his dad that he felt his math teacher was against him. He had only been in school for before 4 days before this incident, and he's saying that his math teacher is against him. All of those things are red flags. He hasn't been in that school long, and I think the way that his sister described it, the way that Colt's sister described it, is that dad was just kind of in his room doing his thing. Sorry, Colin. So the dad was in his room doing his own thing. Colt, the child, was in his room doing his own thing, and I think Colt needed significant help. And because I think the dad even mentioned that Colt wanted to be institutionalized and had said that dad wasn't doing enough to help him. And I do think he needed significant help. Why did uniform officers directly confront family? Oh, about firearms problems. Yeah, so that's more of a so that's not a mental health question. That's like a procedural. Yeah, I can't answer those types of questions. Um, and so if you have any case recommendations, make sure to put those over in the regular comments, and we can take a look at those things. Y'all know I pick and choose, and often I wait until some cases go to trial because then we have more information. Um, and so once again, mom's testimony, she talked about Colt thinking that he had acute mania. To me, it seemed like mom overly identified with Colt, almost like they were the same person. And what he thinks the way I think. And I think that was a part of the problem, how she didn't realize that he was on a very dark path. Well, and the mom had been pretty aggressive. She had Now, it was under the influence, I think, of some substances, but the mom had made threats to harm people. She keyed the dad's car. Like, mom had exhibited some erratic behavior, but to me, once again, with those boundaries and an enmeshed family system where there aren't clear boundaries, there aren't clear roles, and because when she would talk about him, she's like, "Oh, I knew Zoloft would work for him because it works for me." And she's Googling what the correct dose is. She's cutting her pill into fours. So I'm guessing mom was probably prescribed 200 milligrams. And I'm thinking she was maybe giving him 25. And I don't know that for sure. Mom didn't say. She didn't say what milligrams she was giving him, but whatever she took 2 tablets, and she was cutting one of her tablets into fours and giving him a fourth of the dose based on her online research. But Lisa, even within the home, it wouldn't even have to be inherited, because he was seeing probably very intense, volatile arguments between his mom and his dad. He was probably hearing very intense things between dad and the grandparents. So you ask about inherited things. There are things happening within that home that were pure chaos. And the dad said that he didn't use any type of physical discipline, but it sounds like Colt would fight him. Like, Colt would get into physical fights, and dad, I think, would likely fight him back. Like, that is how the sister describes it. That's how the mother describes it. And dad is saying that's not, I think dad might say that no, he didn't do that. It came up with mom that dad didn't want to take the weapon away from him because he didn't want Colt to get mad about it. It sounded, because the sister today said that a lot of their arguments was when Colt wanted something for the weapon and dad said no. And then that's when they would get into these physical altercations. Yeah, this has been a very interesting trial. It's different from the Crumbly case, because with the Crumbly case, he the s- the you had a lot of he had been in school longer. There was more history of his social isolation. With Ethan Crumbly, it sounds like he had one really good friend, and that friend moved away. And then there was this slow spiraling, and that the parents just kind of were doing their own thing and just really weren't paying attention. You didn't hear about Ethan Crumbly getting into these violent altercations. I don't think he was getting suspended at school. Like, uh, Colt probably could have been diagnosed with conduct disorder. So when we talk about diagnoses with the DSM-5, you have oppositional defiant disorder. That's the disorder that I don't love as much. And then you have conduct disorder, and that's when people start breaking laws. Now, I think beyond that, he likely also had significant depression and possible psychosis. And he said he was feeling mania. I don't know if it was mania or not. I think he also had severe like social anxiety and possible panic as well, because excuse me, him not going to school for the entirety of 8th grade and then not having any support getting back into school. The school counselor is going to mention that Colt was in special education and had an IEP in the past, and his high school was not aware of that. And so let's say he has severe learning issues. So kids that struggle with because he didn't do anything academic for all of 8th grade. So he was smart with computers. He was very bright, able to work around, firewalls and things like that. But when it came to academics, he might have had some difficulties. I don't know. They really didn't talk about, because this is not Colt, my bad. Y'all know me in names. The child. This is not the child's trial. In his trial, if he ever is deemed competent to stand trial, and if he does enter some type of plea and doesn't take, a plea deal or something, I don't even know if the state would give him a plea deal, but we're just talking in general. If it did go to trial, his academic records, his academic history, his grades, a lot more of that information would be relevant. What effects would the dose given by mom have on a child? So SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, with children, it can cause I've seen some adults where some medications do this as well, where yes, they have depression, but they don't have thoughts about harming themselves or anything. For some people, the medication can make them feel worse. And so with children and teens, you have to monitor to make sure. I've worked with a lot of kids and teens on SSRIs, and with the hundreds of kids I've worked with, there might have been one or two that had an increase in negative thoughts, and the psychiatrist had to switch their medications. So it is a rare side effect, but it is something that can happen. And it is a medication that you have to take every day. So we don't know if when mom left, because mom was giving it to him every day, and then mom left. So dad got ready for work in the morning. I don't know if Colin was still taking the medication. Sorry, Colt. Y'all know me in names. I don't know that the child was still taking the medication when mom left. He might have, he might not have been. And to just stop an SSRI without like coming down off of it, you can have like brain zaps. You can go into serotonin like withdrawal. Like you can have negative effects with just stopping medications like that on your own and not under the supervision of a doctor. He was on a pretty low dose, and so but normally I always say talk with a doctor. If I was working with somebody and they told me they were giving their child prescription psychotropic medication, and they weren't seeing a psychiatrist, I would have to call social services to say, is this reportable? I'm Dr. Barry. I'm working with this family. And I wouldn't give all the information, because my first call would be, is this reportable? Giving a child medication that's not prescribed to them, that could be of medical neglect. And I know they were in crisis. I know they were having issues. At one point, they didn't have insurance. I had mentioned on my stream before that I wondered if medical insurance was a part of the reason why they weren't getting help. But there are free resources for people. Let me see. Free mental health help in Georgia for people without insurance. Most states, so Georgia has community services boards. They have crisis hotlines. They do have, so Georgia actually has their own crisis line called GCAL. I'm just going to share my screen so y'all can see it. It's GCAL. Let me share this tab. And sometimes families don't know. So you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I like having these conversations. It's not shifting. There we go. It was acting funny. So here is Georgia's crisis and access line. There is the 988 line. There are free mental health clinics. Now, I don't know if they would have fallen below the poverty line. So dad might have made too much money But there is, and I will type that one in next, but there are places, because sometimes people fall in the gap where they make too much money for Medicaid or for medical assistance, but they don't have insurance. Um, Community services boards, we have those here in Virginia. So those are local state funded agencies. And so those are some options. So I just typed in free mental health help in Georgia. And then there is another one, reduce therapy. I forget the name of it. Open Path Collective. There we go. So Open Path Collective is just a directory. This is just general information. And so Open Path Collective is they offer therapy between $40 to $80 a session. Sometimes there are students available for $30 a session. Colt needed to see a licensed person. I would not have let him see a student. So I know she had issues with substances. It sounds like her life was normal, and I don't know what happened later. And I don't know what mental health diagnoses she has. Dad mentioned that she was an engineer. And so I wonder if something happened later. And I don't know what happened as life became more stressful with children. So adjusting to having children, and then if she got involved with those substances. So especially because there's an allegation that she was using methamphetamine. And so, yeah. Um, is Georgia really even a fair state for helping anyone? No. So I always like to send options when people talk about them. So sometimes people in rural areas also have options, because therapists that work in rural areas can sometimes get loan forgiveness for working in a rural area. And so even rural areas sometimes do have options. I do think the school partnered with an agency, because it sounds like there was a referral for a school therapist that might not even use dad's insurance at all. And so if Colt had been enrolled in 8th grade, he possibly could have accessed some of those resources, but he wasn't in school at all, and he was just home. How much do you believe Colt's terrible home life had to do with what happened at the school? So I think there's a mix of supervised access. There were red flags. So at 11 years old, he was he he was searching the word like harm. He searched abuse, and he searched how to kill his dad. Being impulsive and him having some issues and struggles. I would love to see a full psychological on Colt. But I think at some point he ended up fascinated with violence and fascinated with like serial killers and all of that. Y'all know that sometimes my child, sometimes he overhears me talking about cases and me talking about these things. I always talk with him about the impact. So like he's aware that like that's not the right. And if at any point my child was showing signs of harm towards others, if he was being aggressive towards me, towards his dad, at school, I would make sure that he wasn't having access to any of those things. Yeah. So I think that was one of many things, because I do think there was some type of mood disorder too, some type of mood or anxiety. I would want to rule out. So bipolar disorder at 14 would be rare without a parent also having bipolar disorder. It does sound like there was some history of PTSD, of some pretty significant like trauma in the home. That does not excuse somebody's behavior. And but it does just kind of help. And so I do think a lot of this was a huge cry for help. And I think he like wanted to become famous, because I think he wanted to get caught. So they have a plan to not get caught. Like they at the end, like either the police take them out, but like I think he wanted to see the effects, which is sad, because the state asked Marcee, his mother, if she was giving information, like because if there were these true crime groups, or I don't know if it's Discord or Reddit posts, but if there were people asking him questions, and or asking questions like wanting to know more information about him, like his favorite color and things like that, and was she providing information to those groups? Marcee said no, but I don't have any reason to necessarily doubt what she said, but it was just really interesting that the state asked her that, and if she was doing things to increase his popularity. I thought that was interesting that the state asked that too. Those were two things that the state asked of mom. And so, all right, one thing Marcee did, yes. So minimize her suspicion of Colt probably committing an incident. She said she was more concerned about him harming himself. Yeah. Yep. And I think she said she was unaware of the FBI investigation. So the fact that when the FBI got that tip and then the police were sent to the home, mom said that she was unaware of that. I believe. I'm almost positive. The day of the incident, the mom Googled Appalachia high school incident, and she texted, I think, Colin, that it was already on the news, and I believe they ended up talking. Yeah, that was mom's testimony and cross-examination. Because once again, I think she minimized a lot, and because she admitted the things, but like it was almost like she was trying to explain the reason why. And yeah, it didn't come across well to me at all. Okay. And I think it was the defense that asked her if she was concerned that she would be arrested. And she said no, but based on some of her searches, I don't know how accurate that was, but yeah. So the school counselor testified and mentioned that when he initially enrolled, she was not aware that he did not attend 8th grade. And that when he was enrolled in school, there was no mention of any mental health issues. Because if the school's aware that a child is struggling emotionally, they will do what they can to make sure that they have the resources, like from the minute they hit the building. Colt had no friends, none. So remember, I think he attended 7 schools in 4 years. I think it was 7 schools in 4 years and no school for 8th grade. And with all of that moving around, his last true good friend was before all of the instability in their lives. All right. And the school counselor also mentioned that Colt came in really upset, and he mentioned not liking being at school. She saw him as sad and anxious, and he was really having a rough day. She was concerned about him. She really wanted the dad to come and get him, that he really wasn't in a space to be at school, because that's the day that he stayed in the counseling office. So one of the 5 days he was in school, one of them was the pew pew incident, and one of them was he was in the office. He was in the school counseling office for 6 hours. And that day she emailed dad the form to start a social work referral so that he could have additional services. The counselor got I think an email from the grandmother, and they ended up talking, and that the grandmother talked a lot about Marcee, the mom. And now so I think mom had very clear, so mom had substance issues, mom had all of this stuff, but Colin was the one that gave him the weapon. He's the one that purchased the weapon. He's the one that did not secure the weapon. And so I think all the weapons in the home should have been secured. So just having it in dad's closet would not have been the weapon being secured. But it was stored in Colt's room. Because I think in Dad's interview, he mentioned when he got home after knowing that the school incident had happened, he went to Colt's room and he didn't see it by his guitar. So he went to Colt's room to look for the weapon, and it wasn't there. And just it was very, very sad. At some point, I think people were looking at the counselor like, did the counselor miss anything? But I think the counselor did what she could with the information that she had. The counselor didn't know the history of alleged bullying at school. The counselor supposedly knew that the mom had placed the child on Zoloft, and that's where a DFACS referral, if it had been me, I would have at least called to say, is this reportable? Because that's not a medication that I think you should just give people on your own because you do well on it. You talk to your psychiatrist about it. And now like the child needs to have their own appointment. They need to meet with the psychiatrist, because then the psychiatrist is going to ask them, do you hear voices? Do you think people are out to get you? Do you, how are your social relationships? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you having thoughts about self? Are you having thoughts about others? So they would do a full intake. You don't just give people medications because you see symptoms. Ugh. But yeah. So today, Colin's dad, Colin, the dad's former supervisor, testified that he received a call from Colin on the day of the incident that said his son has broken his arm at school. So I wonder how the jury is going to take that the dad seemed to be like not being fully truthful about what was going on with everything. And that later dad even emailed saying, oh, my son has an issue at school. I'm not going to be able to come in. But and not letting everybody, and I can understand why somebody might not want to say, but he made up a whole other story that his son broke his arm. And so, yeah. Mental health crisis. So I've done a separate video. So I talked about how there is a youth mental health crisis here in America. And that's why I think more schools are offering support at school, because then the parents don't have to, get transportation. They don't have to worry about taking people places. There is an epidemic of students harming themselves. And so there is definitely, and so I have a whole other video on mental health crisis in students. Yeah. All right. And it's not just the phones. It's not just it's not any one thing. It's a combination of a lot of things. I personally, I don't think children under 15 should have phones with internet access. That's my own personal thing. Because once kids have access to the internet, you have to monitor it. So my 8-year-old, he has a computer. He doesn't know the password to the computer. And anytime he uses it, we have to, and if at any point we were concerned about his activity, anything he was doing, because sometimes my kiddo, he tries to take the iPad and he tries to close the door. And I'm like, nope, buddy, for his age, if he's on electronics, I need to be within earshot just to kind of hear and understand what's going on. There's some people that find good community online, and then there are some darker sides. There are some, and I think so we're not going to have Colt's full phone extraction. We're not going to know about his Discord groups. They've kind of mentioned that Colt would change his name in different online communities. And so I just wonder what some of those searches and things were. But that would prejudice dad. So that's why they're not bringing in all of that information. But it would just be interesting to know. So I have then the dad's interview. So let's talk about the interview dad gave with Kelsey. That was her first name. I think Kelsey Ward. I think that was her name. And to me, the dad was super calm. This was 3 hours after the incident. He's aware that his son was involved in a mass incident, and he's making jokes. He's just talkative, but he's talking about a lot, but he's not mentioning some of the really important stuff. So sometimes when a person is talking a lot, you think, oh my gosh, they're being so helpful. But really, he was talking a lot about his relationship with the mom. He was talking around some things. They would ask him direct questions. He didn't mention the fact that, yes, Colt had that the FBI had investigated things in the past, but once again, at this point, he's likely not trying to get himself in trouble. And that's when you can just say like, "Hey, let's just not." That's when people have the right to remain silent. But sometimes people think, "Hey, if I don't talk, then I'll look guilty." But dad probably could have used a lawyer. Like mental health epidemic. Let me see. Teen mental health. Trying to figure out what I would have called the video. Yes, teen mental health. There we go. All right. Here is my video on teen mental health. I think I also did one on like the Surgeon General's warning. Yes. So I did one on social media in teens. So I will share that one too. Surgeon General warning. Right. So I will share both of those. Video game chat rooms can get really like some of the language kids can use and people can use, and they can connect with the wrong people. That really can just be this dark side. And sometimes there is like this, the algorithms can radicalize somebody that might not have been on a particular path. So let's say he's like, I don't like my family, and I don't like, if he's searching certain things, certain algorithms, especially Instagram, TikTok. So in general, my understanding, I don't want to get in trouble with any of those platforms. There are platforms where they've done research and the algorithm wants to keep you watching and keep you interested. But there are situations where people can start out with neutral searches and then they start to be fed things that lead them down kind of another path. Now, no matter what I watch, so I'm not going to hurt people because I'm not like, that's just not what I'm going to do. But that was, so I do think that substances likely played a role in that situation, and then the relationship between mom and the grandmother was probably strained. That relationship was probably pretty strained. But I agree. I totally agree. So, but his demeanor during the interview, like it seemed like he was calm. He seemed to minimize things, and that's when I wanted to talk about codependence. And he mentioned trying to be the glue that holds his family together, but his family needed help, and them needing help didn't in any way like take away from the role he was doing. So I'm a licensed psychologist. My child he'll probably be in therapy by 10, like at least, like I don't like where I'm already looking for a psychological evaluation because he's showing signs of possible ADHD like his mom. And so there's nothing wrong with getting an assessment. There's nothing wrong with getting help. When you know what you're working with, you can kind of help support your child better. And that the professionals, once a kid is about 12 years old, you become more of a coach than a parent. But it seemed like there weren't really great boundaries in that household. So that will bring me to the sister. Okay. So Colt's sister testified. She did a phenomenal job. Now, when the defense cross-examined her, I think they were trying to hurt her credibility, but I wish the state had like asked to approach, or I don't, but because they just kept saying, did you remember saying this? Do you remember saying that? Do you remember saying this? And she hadn't watched her interview. She didn't get to see her transcript, but she was pretty much saying I lied during that interview. So my dad told me to not make him look bad. I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't exactly what she said. And I think the defense was caught off guard by that, and they immediately objected. They do not want her testimony to stand. I do think it will. And the state did a phenomenal job finally saying, they're objecting because they don't like it. They're not listing law. Like he's like, this isn't fair. Like the objection was, I don't like this. I'm paraphrasing again. But the state was like, you need a law. Like this, there's no law that says we have to let you know that a witness's statement has completely changed. Because I guess the defense was aware that her statement was going to be different. But I think they didn't know that she was going to say dad told her to lie. They didn't know that was going to come out. And so which hurt their client in a big way. And I'll share some additional thoughts in just a moment. She talked about moving around a lot as a family. She's currently in foster care, and she has no contact with her biological parents or biological grandparents. The defense brought out the fact that she goes by a different last name, and I don't blame her. And they even asked, you don't want to be known as the sister of the school. It's like, she's like, no, I don't want to be. And if I was on the jury, I'd be like, I get it, girl. Like your family, like there was a lot going on. There's a lot in the news. Her mom, because remember, right after this incident, mom, because mom ends up, I think, arrested for something. Like her family has a lot going on. And but the defense tried to hurt her credibility to say she's concerned that if dad isn't convicted, that she'll have to go back. Like there's a chance that she might go back to him. And she just came off incredibly credible to me. I thought that the sister's testimony was credible. Based on everything I've seen in this trial, when she said that she was told to not admit that dad knew about the Nicholas Cruz posters and the specific things that dad didn't want her to mention, that really didn't surprise me. Just based on, like I said, I watched his interview, and to me, he seemed to be minimizing things just based on my observation, what I thought. She became kind of emotional when talking about law enforcement being at the home, which is completely understandable, because it likely brought up a lot of those big emotions about that day. During her interview, I think she had said something to the effect. So this was the interview immediately following the incident. She had said, according to the defense, and so the defense asked her questions. Did you say that you went into the room and you saw that the pew was gone? And she said no, that she didn't say that. And so the defense asked her if she was worried that she would somehow be blamed for like not reporting that the gun was gone. And it didn't feel, but once the defense was just doing their job, it would have been ineffective assistance of counsel if they didn't push her a little. But the state appropriately objected, feeling like they were badgering the witness. But I do think they were trying to go to credibility. And that's what the defense gets to do. It was painful to watch. It was very, very painful to watch. She was such a brave young girl. I thought she did a phenomenal job, and I believe her. I totally believe her. And I wonder what the jury thought. And the jury, they won't be able to talk about it until after everything is done. I could see the deliberations in this case, because the jury, for the first time, they'll get to kind of talk about everything that they saw, everything that they heard. When the sister came out, dad kind of made like a face at her. And I think he was trying to get her to smile, or I don't like, because he saw her walk out, and if you go back and watch it, and y'all correct me in the chat if y'all have seen him make that squinting face at people before, but it seemed like he was trying to like joke with his daughter, and she wants nothing to do with him. She describes her life now as calmer, that she actually feels like a family. They talked about how dad would like kind of vent to her about his frustrations with her brother and how he didn't know how to help or handle it. And she was 13 and she's 14 now, and ninth grader, same age as her brother when this whole thing happened. Like it's just she's been through so much. I'm glad she's in therapy, and she talked about how helpful that had been. There was probably a lot of, because it was probably hard for her to trust somebody else at first. And so kudos to her therapist. Kudos to her foster family. Foster families don't always adopt because the defense brought up like, oh, you want to be adopted by this family? And she was like, I don't, because also like adoption isn't guaranteed. So if dad is convicted, the state will likely work on terminating dad's parental rights. They might also terminate mom's parental rights. Rights have to be terminated in order for her to be adopted. She can't just choose. She's a child. Minors don't get to just choose, I want to, and she's too young to be emancipated. So emancipated is when like a 16 or 17-year-old kid that has a job, has a car, is able to sustain themselves, pay for their bills, like that's where they maybe say, I want to be emancipated from my parents. I've worked with people that like had all their ducks in a row, could live independently, and the judge still said, no, you have to stay at home. You can't be emancipated. And so children don't have choice. They don't have choice, and my heart really breaks for her. I'm glad that she's in a more peaceful situation. It makes sense to me that in the immediate after effects of this, that she wanted to protect her dad. She wanted to protect her family. And now having been away and having felt, oh, like this is what stability is. This actually feels like a family, possibly for the first time, getting to experience that, she likely opened up more. And once again, I just thought she was incredibly credible. Later today, I am going to do a live talking about Corey Richins. And her defense team brought up, is she a witch or a widow? And like you could look at the same evidence and one person could see a witch. And I think they're hoping just one, because they might be hoping that somebody sees a grieving widow. But there was a lot of just opening statements and everything. I can't wait to talk to y'all about it. It's going to be at 6 p.m. So that's in 2 hours. I will see y'all. Wait, was it 1 hour? Gosh, 5. It's in 1 hour. I will see y'all in an hour. And then tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm going live with, y'all know me and my brain. Who am I going live with? I'm going live with Paul, with Reporting Live from My Sofa, to review Corey Richins' body cam video. So we're going to break down, talk about the body cam video. And so that will be tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all so much for watching. If you could like the video, it just helps it in the algorithm. If you are new here, welcome. Once again, I'm a licensed psychologist. I like to talk about the psychology aspects of true crime. And in this case, family dynamics has really been a lot. And then just red flags in mental health cases. And so I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. If you are skipping any trials, I will see y'all when I see y'all. Have a good one. Bye.